Okay, so we've got our machine ready. We've put the plugs in each outlet, and we've made sure that our sets are in sets. So that's the outlet for 1, the 2 pads together, for 2, for 3, for 4. And when I put these on my client, I am going to make sure I know exactly where I put them. So for me, I always start on the legs and work up. So I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then I know that when I'm instructing my client what pads to hold, and I know that my wires are not going to get tied up. Now I've put my straps on my client already, so I pretty much know that my straps are going to fit depending on my client's size, and I've put them where I've wanted them. So basically for the leg, I wouldn't have 2 straps down in here with the 2 pads down here, because the only part of the muscle that's going to get worked out is going to be these 2. So I want to really go through the full extent of the muscle. I want the whole muscle to work out. So I put a pad here and a pad as high up as I possibly could, so the whole muscle is getting a workout, not just part of it. On the outside you'd do the same. So you'd come as high as possible, down to the knee, and you know the whole muscle is getting a workout. So once I keep my client covered as much as I possibly can. I'm placing the pads on the legs, I'm going to cover the top half. When I'm placing the pads on the top half, I'd cover the legs. However, when you start the treatment, you need to uncover that area again, because you've got to watch for the contraction. And if the client's covered, you won't see the contraction. So you'd uncover that, get the contraction going on all 4 sets of pads, cover the client, because once you've seen the contraction, that's fine. You don't need the client to sit there cold any longer. So I'm going to do one side of the body so that you can see the padding. I've already done my saline solution, which is literally salt in hot water. You need to make sure that your salt dilutes, it's not in crystals, because you want that water to be thoroughly soaked in a saline solution. Take out most of the water. You only need it damp, you don't need it sopping, because the client doesn't like water running all over them either. And then you would make sure that the pads are absolutely covered in that saline solution. I'm going to put my first 2 on. So I'm going to undo my 2 straps. They're in place for me anyway. I put 1 here, 1 up here, and they are cold even though the water's warm. So if you had cold water, or you let your water go cold, it would be even worse. Then I get my second set, and you can see they're not getting tangled, and I know exactly where they're going. I would soak 1 pad, then the other, get any excess water off. I've got black at the bottom, so I'm going to stay in that format. Now, girls, I can tell you right now that your time will be lost on strapping someone up. So don't fret about it, just get in there, get it done, strap them up. This is not an holistic treatment, you've just got to get the job done as fast but as competently as possible. So that's my leg done. I'd do the other leg. I would cover my client just while I do the rest of her padding. So I'm going to now do the hip for my client. So I'm going to saline solution my pads again, take any excess water off. The first strap is holding the pad on the pelvic line. The second strap is holding the pad on that hip area. Now, check your wires, make sure your wires aren't loose. Also, make sure that you keep your colours in sync. Make sure that your pads are not overlapping. Make sure your pads are not dirty. Before you start, you would clean them because it will create a hot spot if they're dirty or grubby, so the pads should always be washed and sanitised. And then you would make sure that your pads are sitting flat, and you would make sure that the strap is going straight through the centre of them. It's not wonky on one side where the pad can lift, because if the client moves or they all of a sudden sit flat again, they're going to get a shock. So our last two, just for demonstration purposes, is going to be the abs. So I would put one here, one higher up, make sure that they don't overlap, check my wires are in, cover my client. So we'd do the whole body and you would know what straps are going where. The next thing we're going to do is check the client's sensitivity to the pads. So only uncover what you're doing at that time. In my case, I'm going to show you that that's how your tail will be, because you want to do all the legs pretty soon, get a contraction as soon as you possibly can, and then move on once you've covered your client. So I know number one is my outside two pads. So I am now going to put my machine on. You will see that there's a light here. Can you see this red light? Okay. When that light is on, there's a current coming through the pad. So you only ever turn your dial when the light is on. Some of these machines have got a light and a buzz. I like the ones with the buzz because I don't look at the light, I wait for the buzz, gently turn it up. Some of them have just got a light, which means you've got to keep that light in the corner of your eye. You do not want to turn this machine up if that light isn't on, because it means that there's no contraction, no electricity going through to cause a contraction, which means all of a sudden you turn it up and they get the electricity bang in one go. And you don't want to do that. You want the electricity to go up gently when it's already surging. So that now brings me on to the surge. The surge is adapted by here. You've got a frequency and you've got the pulse, which we've just spoken about. In theory, I'm going to cover what the frequency means and what the pulse means, so you know which one to turn up. But basically, what they are is they're how much of the current's coming through the pads at any one time, and how often it's coming through the pads. So if you've got a client who's very muscular and used to this treatment, you might have a really strong surge very often. If you've got someone who isn't used to this, they might want a light surge and a big space before the next surge comes. Then a surge, then a space. So we'll get that covered. But the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell my client that we're working on this pad, and I want you to tell me, Luce, please, when you can feel sensation. So when you can feel a sensation, you need to tell me. Yeah? Onto the pads here, tell me when you can feel a sensation. Onto the pads here, tell me when you can feel sensation. And onto the pads up here, and again tell me when you can feel a sensation. Okay, I now know that there's a current coming through all of those pads. I know that the client's sensitivity is fine. I know that she's feeling the treatment. What I now need to do, because that's very, very low, what I now need to do is I need to get a contraction. I need to see that I have placed the pads in the right place. Now, we've already discussed that these are gently on a curve. Outside curving in, outside curving in, because that's the way our muscle runs. It runs on a curve. So I'd have done the whole body before then moving on. I'm now looking for contraction. So I'm coming back to this one here, Luz. I want to try and see a contraction, but if it becomes too uncomfortable before I see a contraction, you need to let me know. So I would now, on the surge, which is basically on the pulse with the light on, gently go up, check. Okay. Can you see? Yeah? I know my pads are in the perfect place. It is working that muscle out. I'm now going to do this one. So we're on to this one. And again, I'm going to look for the contraction. But if it becomes uncomfortable before then, you need to let me know. I'm taking this up on the light. There we go. I know that's done. Now I would get both of those legs done. I don't need to look at my client's legs any longer. I've got contraction. The pads are in the right place. Now we're going to move on to these ones here. So you're going to let your client know it's these ones that you're on. And again, I want to try to see a contraction. And if my client can tell me at any point if it's beyond uncomfortable, it shouldn't be. It's just the movement of the muscle. But different people have different sensitivities. So once again, on the light. On the light and check. On the light and check. On the light and check. Right, I've got a contraction there. So I'm going to cover this area and I am going to now check my two here. Again, make sure that they're apart. Tell your client which pads you're working on. On the light, gently up. On the light, gently up. Okay, I've got my contraction here as well. So I can now cover my client. When clients get used to this, you might give them a magazine, they might want their phone, so that they can do some work. They'll literally, this will not be a strange sensation for them. This will be normal. But I am on the lowest styles I can possibly be on, and my client is already really thinking, wow, this is working. In a few moments, she'll get used to that. It's like going to the gym. Who does go to the gym? When you go to the gym, you don't jump on a treadmill and start running. You walk, you jog, you start to run, then you do the hills, you do the different heights on the running machine. You don't jump on a machine and start to run. You always slowly work up. That gets your muscles ready. And when your muscles are ready, they can take more. So your client would be laying here with it quite low like this. And then within a few moments, she's going to be able to say to you, yep, we're ready to go up a little bit more now. Now, obviously, the higher you go for your client, the better the treatment is for them. But some people have got a really high pain threshold. So they might think, I want my money's worth, I'm going to get her to whack that up. Just be aware that that is not going to give her a better treatment. That is going to cause her muscle fatigue. Because even though she can take the higher contraction, it doesn't mean that it's good for her muscle. It's too much, too soon for her muscle type. So use your common sense. If you're waking this up high and you've not seen this client before, there's something wrong. So very, very slowly, but normally most sensible clients will say, you know what, Julie, we're 15 minutes in, this is the maximum that I think my muscles will take now, and I'm quite happy to continue the treatment on this. Now, your legs can take a lot more than your stomach, normally. So they might say to you, I want you to go higher on the legs, but I can't take any more on the stomach. They might say to you, you can go higher on the hip, but no higher on the abs. They might say to you, you can go higher on the inner thigh, but no higher on the outer thigh. Because different parts of the body can take different pressures, can take different sensations. Yeah, this is in one of your assignments. So you need to gauge that. Now there is one rule which you really do need to follow. If the two pads here is on dial number, say, 4, then you want the 2 pads on the opposite side to also be on 4. If these are on 5, you want these to be 5. If these are on 3, you want these to be on 3. And the reason is because you want the same muscles to get the same workout. This leg might be a lot stronger because it's her right leg and she's right-handed, so she might be able to take a lot more pressure on this leg. But that means that this leg is going to end up far more musclier than this leg because you never made sure that they were on the same settings for the same muscle. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So we're going to jump to the end of the treatment. So it's been on for the amount of time that's needed. Now, when you turn these off, don't just switch them off at the back, which turns them all off in one go. You take them down one at a time. You don't take them down slow, you don't take them down fast, but you do take them down. So, for instance, I would say to my client, and I do this in the order that I put them on. So I'm going to take this one down for you now. I'm taking this one down. I'm taking this one down. And this one down, and so on. Now they're all completely off. What you would then do is you would remove the pads, but you would remove them in the opposite order that you put them on. 8 would come off first, 7, 6, so on. If you don't do it like that, your wires will be one mass tangle. So let me give you an idea. The last pads I put on was up here. Undo the straps, get them out of your way, take those off. I have no tangle because it was the last one I put on. And place. Yeah, no tangle, because it was the next one that I put on. So that's how you would remove the pads. Now, what you will do now is you would get some clean, warm water and you would sponge the salt off of your client's body. Don't leave the salt on them, it can irritate your skin. Anyone who's been to the beach for the day and you then find that the salt water is really starting to irritate your skin. So get the salt water off the body, block dry again, which you can just do with your towel. Let your client relax and let her muscles just relax. Give them a glass of water like we always do after a treatment because they've been on the bed, they're going to be dehydrated, and go through her aftercare advice. And the aftercare advice for Faradic is all going to be linked with what the treatment's doing for her. The treatment is a muscle stimulator. Therefore, cardiovascular, gym, diet, a whole exercise routine, a whole lifestyle routine, reducing alcohol, reducing nicotine, reducing caffeine. All of these things we know can be damaging to the body. This is all the advice you give to them. Now, before we start a course of treatments, measure your client. Get the inches, get your graft, and measure inches. Make a note of it. Don't measure her every time because it could take a few treatments before you start to see results. Your client is not going to lose weight by having this treatment done. They're going to lose inches. So this is not a weight loss treatment, it's an inch loss treatment. So when you remeasure your client, you'll see that she's lost inches, but only if she's followed your aftercare advice that you gave her. Only, because nobody can go and have a bad lifestyle and this treatment be really effective. It's working, but nowhere near like it should. So that is a lot of money your client is pretty much throwing away. So measure the inches. Now, on galvanic we took a photograph, as you know, so that you could see the effects of cellulite before and after a course of treatment. You could take a photo if the client asks you to, but to be honest, the measuring is the true effect of how well this treatment has worked for her.